It's Queensland.
I feel like, and the winner is.
Yeah.
Hey,
The
Chris.
Chris.
Hey.
Okay. Good luck.
All right. Well, let's get into it. No time to waste. So, what are the awesome things we can get out of it? How do we make the syllabus work for us? To borrow some phrases from Brad and Pete. And I've also borrowed some of Brad's approaches. So, I've got blue and red. There may even be a little bit of green that's snuck in there. And my perspective is that what we've got in Queensland is something that's quite flexible, dynamic, and personal. To make things a little complicated in Queensland, we've decided not to really do much of our own stuff, but rather take it from ACARA. So we can't really download a PDF. We've got it all developed and delivered to us just through a web browser. And that's kind of how we also engage with Australian curriculum. So I know that Josh might overlap with some of this stuff. So let's just quickly shoot through some of the Australian curriculum stuff. And basically, you've just got to print to PDF to make this work, which is what I've done. So first of all, from the rationale, I really like that in blue, it tells us that it's about sharing music and ideas. And it's about building knowledge and enhancing empathy, which I think is really cool stuff to have right at the very start of an arts, particularly music syllabus. And again, music learning is about recognizing music's contribution in shaping identity and the ability to explore personal, local, and global issues and ideas. Again, I think that's pretty cool. Carrying on, its ability to transform the heart, soul, mind, and spirit of individuals and communities. All really cool stuff. Following on with the aims, students, music is going to develop their confidence to be creative, innovative, thoughtful, skillful, and informed musicians. Or a little bit of red there. Listening with intent and purpose. Aesthetic knowledge, I've got to think about those a little bit more. But then, ultimately, to acquire skills and become independent music learners. That's pretty cool stuff. Musical training curriculum, and thus in Queensland, is then broken into 4 different domains. So exploring and responding, developing practices and skills, creating and making, presenting and performing. When we look at exploring and responding, it wants to have diverse examples, not limited examples, but diverse. I think that's great. Also, in developing practices and skills, it's about play, imagination, experimentation, creative and critical thinking, and practice. I think that's also pretty cool. Creative skills and confidence, and critical skills for listening. Moving on to creating and making. Well, it talks about having music-specific or multi-arts creative processes. And I think that collaboration is one of the most important things that we should be building in our young people in the 21st century. So it's right there at the start in creating and making. And also compose in forms and styles of interest with relevance. So it's got to be relevant to the students, not something that's disconnected from them and their context. So I think that's also pretty cool. And then finally, presenting and performing. And I put a big red box around this one because I think it's really cool that it's about the students planning, selecting, and designing about their presentations and performance, not us, the teachers. So about giving them a little bit of voice in that space. Now, from the AC 9.0, we also have key considerations. That's the elements of music, music practices and listening, music practices for composing, performing, and responding. Now, I thought this was interesting. Notating, documenting, and or recording. Well, what is the purpose of that? What's the point and why? And I really like that it is to preserve music for future use in blue there. So why do we document it? Why do we record it? It's so that other people can learn from it or listen to it and enjoy and experience it down the track, which I think is pretty cool. We get into some level descriptors for year 7 and 8, which is what we're focusing on in the symposium. And I like that it's about building on each student's prior learning and experiences. Now, a student might take music in year 7 or in year 8 and might have had no formal experiences, but there's still something that we can build on because they've engaged with music at some point in time in their life. I also like that it talks to multi-arts and transdisciplinary or hybrid forms of music, which is pretty cool. And the idea that we're trying to expand their awareness of diversity and of music practices, genres, and styles. So it's not about completely reshaping their minds, but it's about expanding it. I'm going to have to really fly because it's already up to 5 minutes and 20 seconds left. All right, so I'm just going to skip through that. It's all about the achievement standard that we're trying to actually work towards. So at the end of year 7 and 8, we should see qualities of this particular achievement standard in the work that they have created. So by the end of year 8, students analyse how the elements of music and compositional devices are manipulated, the music they compose, perform, or experience. They evaluate, they describe, and this is in red. I've still got to think about this. This is a new syllabus that we're using for the first time in our school this year. They describe respectful approaches to composing, performing, and or responding to music. I'm just not quite sure what I think about that yet. They demonstrate listening and oral skills when composing and performing. I like oral skills as about actually doing something that's meaningful and practical. Yeah, where I love the flexibility. So in the next couple of slides, I'm pointing out the use of the phrase such as. So often we read syllabuses or syllabi as things that we have to do, but a lot of the language such as means that, well, maybe there's things that you could choose to do or things that you choose not to do. So we have investigating and trialing ways of realizing stylistic features, such as distortion, decay, delay, etc. And I think that they're cool things to look at, but maybe there's a longer list that's not included. We also have interpreting music, such as graphic or interactive scores, staff notation, or tablature. And there's more things like such as and also for example. Often interpreted as must, but it's not. Now for the Queensland specific stuff. So what Queensland has done is they've taken the ICARA syllabus and broken it down into useful tools to help teachers unpack it. And again, we can see some really cool uses of words. So this particular resource can be used as a resource to support curriculum planning, but it might not need to be. It can be. We have this document here, which links a whole bunch of the descriptors from ICARA with certain things that they do. And moving on, we also have may. So we have this assessment and techniques and conditions document, and it talks to this may involve using a process to solve a problem or to inform new actions. Not it has to. I think that's cool. And if you're paying attention there, Brad in particular, if you see that there's a little bit of green there, it could be used to achieve range and balance within an assessment program. I think that's pretty cool. Some more examples from the document as you scroll down, some more examples of may. And we also have, at the bottom, suggested length. So when it talks to how long a composition should be or a performance or short response or examination, it's all suggested. And one of my gripes has been, if you can only do a composition that's 30 seconds long or 12 bars long, what if you've got more to say? What if you actually have a whole song that you want to write? Can't you do that? Well, it's only suggested. So sure, let's write a whole song or maybe perform a whole song, not just 30 seconds of it. 7 and 8, standard elaborations. In blue there, a folio of student work across the year band. Doesn't need to be just one piece of assessment or 3, it could be 10. And at the bottom there, underlined in red, coverage of the achievement standards across the year or band. So we have the whole 2 years to actually work towards achieving that particular standards elaboration. And simple note for Queensland, we mark on a 5-point scale, A through to E. And in Queensland, the achievement standard represents the C standard. So if you do what the syllabus says as an achievement standard, you get a C. That means that if you do more than the achievement standard, you can get an A or a B. And likewise, if you do less, you can get a D or an E. And we use words like discerning or informed or description or identification to distinguish between those things. Just a note about these rubrics, they are just a starting point. Queensland wants us to actually modify these to be appropriate to tasks that we are actually setting and what we want those tasks to look like. And finally, let's see if I can get through this in 37 seconds. These are, again, from ICARA, examples of knowledge, skills, and music. They're not definitive. And I'm just going to quickly skip down to this stuff where it talks about music documentation. And again, it gives you a little bit of an option there. So reflection, I like a lot of it. Some of it I'm still a bit, And you might have seen something that you missed, let me know. That'd be really helpful.
There's so many good things about that syllabus, particularly how it is flexible, and there's lots of similarities between the New South Wales one and Queensland one, for example. I'm curious, though, what do you feel constrained by the most? There's lots of things that are really cool, but when push comes to shove and the things that you have to do, they don't necessarily agree with. Are there any of those big ones for you?
Look, I really don't think so. I think it comes down to maybe a head of department or a curriculum leader interpreting some of those such as, or could be, or examples of, and interpreting them as must-dos. And yeah, I think that that's what we've encountered in the past. And I certainly see evidence in my own practice over the years of applying interpretation in that way. But yeah, I think that certainly for myself, it's always been a challenge of what do I actually want to do? And referring to your video that I watched yesterday afternoon, I think very much comes back to also what the teacher feels competent in and what their interests and skills are. Because I know when I started, in senior, we had a very different syllabus. One of the things that had to happen was an oral skills exam that required 2-part notation. And I'm like, I can't play 2 parts on the piano at the same time. Sibelius is going to help me do that. But it was really stressful, and also feeling like I'm an imposter in that situation. But I think for our current situation, and this speaks really to our senior syllabus in Queensland as well, that maybe we'll do another day, but they are very generous and very flexible documents. And there's nothing that dictates the style of music that you have to do, the way that you do it in, the way that you break it down into larger pieces of assessment or across a portfolio, which is, I think, the way I'm leaning towards at the moment.
I reckon the may and could are a double-edged sword in Queensland, so flexible, yet everything means nothing to me.
Queensland is such a large state in terms of its geographical area. Students that are learning up in Cairns or far north Queensland have a very different cultural understanding to those of us that are in southeast Queensland. Even in Brisbane, we talk about us being a large country town compared to Sydney or Melbourne. I think that our engagement with the arts needs to reflect our communities, and having a syllabus that provides that flexibility and doesn't dictate levels of proficiency. The example I like to use is you could take a master musician like a Keith Jarrett and ask him to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and he's going to do it in a way that's very, very different to the way that a brand new student in year 8 who's never played an instrument before. But it doesn't mean that we have to give them repertoire that's really, really hard. We can actually give them something that they can engage with and they can play in a way that's dynamic and interesting for the audience. So yeah, I think sometimes we want to have, well, you have to play this level of difficulty like an AABB syllabus might look. But the reality is we have students that might start music in year 10 and never have learnt formal music before that and are just kind of interested in jamming. And they shouldn't be disqualified from participating because we have something in the syllabus that restricts their entry to it. A beginner musician can still learn to move an audience through emotionally in the way that they engage with what they're playing.